Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Always, you like, what if no one comes? What? I told someone once who was trying to figure out how to motivate influencers to do things. I get paid in audiences and T-shirts, and I have enough T-shirts, but you never have enough audiences. So thank you for coming and being the audience today. A bunch of people have said that this is a scary talk title. And a bunch of people have also told me there's kind of a theme in a lot of my talk titles that they are scary. Like, I don't want to change the world. That's not for me. Would you like this title better? Right? Just one thing, probably pretty small, where you already have some influence. That's a better fit. Well, as the saying goes, they are the same picture, right? You don't have to change the world totally, utterly, irrevocably, and famously to change the world. If you change one little thing, you have changed the world. And the tools you use to fix your weekly status meeting are the tools you use to fix big things too. So learn how to change things and you'll learn how to change things. That's the deal, okay? Have I changed the world? I think I have, and it's a nice feeling. Let me tell you, from the other side of it, looking back and going, yeah, I did that, right? So I did this talk almost 10 years ago now, which I will talk more about in a minute, called Stop Teaching C When You're Teaching C++. And this is a talk that worked. Some folks teach C++ differently now, and for the better. I think not only did it work, but people come up to me and say, I did what you said and it worked. That's a very good feeling. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you ever get the chance to say to someone, I did what you said and it worked, please say it. It is the best thing to hear. As Mike mentioned, I helped to found Include C++. And we've made some differences, mostly around conferences. Some of the differences we plan to make have not happened yet, but we're not so much an activist group these days as the ragtag remnants of an activist group, but we have a lovely Discord server, and I encourage you to join it, and someday an activist group will arise out of that. I also ran a business for decades, which still exists, which hired people, made them better, fed their families, brought money in, usually from outside our city and our country, and helped our local economy. And also our clients did better because we were helping them. And all of these things changed the worlds of those people in those companies. And there's a saying that you should send the elevator back down when you find yourself higher than where you started. And that's something I've really worked on doing, encouraging people to stay in this industry who feel like maybe they don't belong, mostly because someone's telling them they don't belong. And I love saying that person is wrong. You belong. And just in general to think about what it means to succeed. You know, is it about dying with the most toys, or are there other measures of I succeeded, I excelled? And being kind of open about that and talking to people about finding your own definition of succeeding. But there are other changes we've all seen. Like, does inventing a new programming language change the world? I think most people would feel that the invention of C++ changed our world. But there's been a lot of programming languages invented since the early 80s that probably didn't change the world. And one of the reasons that C++ did well was a steady, decades-long effort. You should try this language. You should write a compiler for this language. You should write a book about this language. You should teach this language. It's very hard work to promote something. Eventually, it might still promote itself, but you may note that the inventor of our language is still really actively involved in promoting and improving that language. It's been a never-ending activity. Or what if you wrote like a little script, a little batch something, just to kind of help yourself out, and you stuck it on a web server so you could use it from home as well as from work, and then you told a couple of your friends, would that change the world? Well, it would if it was Compiler Explorer. Right? Like Compiler Explorer has absolutely changed the way we teach C++, the way we learn C++, the way we report compiler bugs, the way we explore new features that the committee just added, the way we write books and conference talks. Other little handy utilities that have been stuck on websites, maybe not quite the same reception. I've written some books, maybe a few dozen. Writing a book can change the world. I could tell you 5 or 10 books that have changed my life. But how many million books have been written is more to it than just the act of creation. And that's with all of these things. It's not a point effect. You don't go do one thing and ta-da, everything's different. You know, you might need to promote that thing for a long time afterwards, as I say in my book, quote, and that kind of stuff. You might need to get out there and give talks, and you might need to strong-arm people over dinners. There's a lot of work in making a change that it might be spearheaded or organized around a piece of content. And let's be frank, there's a lot of luck. Do not underestimate the power of luck. But the reason that it's work is because you have to change people. Changing the world means making people do something that they wouldn't have done except for you asked them, showed them, told them, ordered them, persuaded them to do it. And that's how the world changes. Now, you know, Matt Godbolt didn't individually email tons of people and say, hey, next time you're doing a talk, could you put a Godbolt link in your slides? We just did that. But we did that because we kind of caught that idea from each other. And that's the change, that people start doing different things. So it's not enough to just create a thing, put it out in the world and say, now my thing will change the world. Now your thing may give you a focus object around which to change the world. But I'm not going to tell you to invent a programming language, although it can be done, or to write a book, or to transform the world with a useful website. These things all count too. We should have more tests on this project. Who's worked with someone who's like, be right back, just writing as a JSON parser? Right? Yeah. We all know that person. We should use a trusted community library, right? If you get your team to stop writing JSON parsers, quote, over the weekend, unquote, which spoiler alert, no, you will change your team. You will change a lot if you start using trusted community libraries. Telling one person, this job would be great for you, and encouraging that person, literally giving them courage to apply for that job. You know it's going to change their life if they get it, and you may very well change the company that hires them because they'll get this great candidate who was afraid to apply. We should make sure all kinds of people are welcome at our event, in our company, in our organization, in our club. I think the weekly meeting would be more effective if you finish the sentence. You know the end of the sentence. I don't, and neither does anyone else until you say it. Okay? And just the famous not cool. 2 words, but such a difference. Obviously to the person who's being harassed or made fun of or othered or excluded, but also to the person who hears them and begins to learn that the way they're behaving is not, in fact, cool. A little "we don't do that here" goes a long way. And these are changing the world. All of them. What I'm not going to talk about, because I got to put something out of scope, this isn't about changing yourself, okay? If you want to quit smoking or take up watercolors or something, this is not about that. Nor is this about persuading your partner that you need to move to Niagara Falls or Muskoka or something. Those are changes, but the techniques I'm talking about today are not for that. What you should be thinking about is we should, you should, and my favorite, someone should. Wouldn't it be better if? That's what we're talking about. Now, to be clear, and I'll say this a bunch of times, change is hard, change is work. And one of the reasons that it's work is you can't just say someone should. Technically, you don't have to have done whatever it is you're advocating for, but it makes a huge difference if you have, or if you have at least started, if you are walking the walk, not just talking the talk. So that before you can even start changing other people, you often do have to do some of the work yourself. But there are also people who will not appreciate your suggestions, who don't want more tests in the project, who want to write a JSON parser over the weekend as a hero. And they will push back and actively oppose what you're trying to achieve. In my Steps to Wisdom talk, I said one of the things that takes a junior apart from a senior is that when a junior runs into some kind of a hurdle, they go, oh, well, I guess this can't be done. It's not possible. I thought if we called this API, we'd get some JSON, we could parse it, but turns out we can't. And the senior goes, this should work. I'm going to figure out what's wrong with this JSON. I'm going to call the people who provide the API. I'm going to read the documentation again because this should work. And that belief powers through a ton of hurdles and gets stuff done where other people gave up. When you're trying to change the world or your small corner, you don't know whether or not it'll work. And you don't have that kind of battering ram at your back that moves you forward and tells you it absolutely can happen. But you don't have to do it alone. In fact, you probably shouldn't be doing it alone. And you don't have to start with the biggest, scariest, most difficult, most intimidating thing. Even if it's the most important, you don't have to start with that. This is your project. Start with what you want to start with. Okay, but what do you do? The first thing you have to do is take a big breath, as Karen has taught us, and decide to be brave. Being brave is not about not being scared. Being brave is about being scared and doing it anyway. And if you're going to try to tell people we are doing it wrong, that's a little scary because some of them are going to say, no, we are not. And you're going to have to deal with that. Know what you're trying to do. You can't just say not this. You can't just say something should be different. The way you say it to yourself may not be the way you say it to other people. And we'll talk a bit about leading with benefits and things like that. But to yourself, you should know, what am I trying to achieve? You know, am I trying to achieve, last year, no women applied for this thing. I'd like to see some women apply this year. That's a formulation of a clear position. Then, who needs to change in order to get what you want? So if it's, we should have more tests on this project, you got to persuade your coworkers to write them and you got to persuade someone to authorize the time, right? If it's, we should not have a dress code at work anymore and we should all be able to wear whatever we want, you need to probably reach up a little higher than just your immediate team. So who needs to change? Who can you change? I'm going to talk about this a lot more. Then you compare the two. Come on, we're programmers, okay? This is the group that needs to change. This is the group I can change. Do they overlap at all? Then you're going to do one of four things. If they overlap, all right, you got your marching orders, let's go. You know what you want to do. If they don't, or not enough for you to proceed, don't work alone. Join a team or gather a team so you will have more change power. If whatever reason you don't want to do that, then put in the work to increase your change power. This is typically a years-long thing to do. Quicker solution, change your scope. All of these will get more time. So who needs to change? I'm going to give you a big list of folks, and as we go down the list, it gets harder, okay? Easiest, your teammates. They're your peers, they already value your opinion, and you know what motivates them, and that's a huge deal. Company policy, obviously a little bit harder to deal with, but what if your change needs to happen outside your organization? I need that conference over there to change their policies. I've played that game. A standards committee, some of us have played that game, right? Trying to get the standards committee to do something. Someone who makes or sells you a tool or a library or something that you use in your work and you want them to change something about it, or some parallel open source community. These are much, much harder to change. What is your leverage over an open source community? You can't boss them around. And then there's the public or the semi-public. Like my Stop Teaching C. None of those people worked for me or with me, right? They were my colleagues and my peers, and I wanted them to stop what they were doing and do it a different way. It's obviously a lot harder. Then there's the public. It's harder to convince a bigger group for a lot of reasons. First of all, there's layers and hierarchy and different, so technically it may be fine, but from a business or money point of view, it may be terrible. The bigger the group, the more likely that comes into play. So you have different objections to what you're doing, but also usually just one person who thinks it's terrible can kill it. And if it's 1 out of 4, you feel like, well, I should be able to persuade more than 75% of a group. But if it's 1 out of 10,000, you're still just as killed, and you might have persuaded the other 9,999. So the bigger groups are harder. I knew that from the beginning. But what I have learned painfully and by failing is that you use different techniques at different kinds of groups. The way you persuade your teammates to do something is not the way you persuade your boss, and it's certainly not the way you persuade the head of some other company. If someone is a vendor to you, you can threaten them with, we're going to take our business elsewhere. Open source communities don't care about that. People who are running rival organizations are not your friend, your buddy, your pal, and will not respond well to, trust me, I tried it, it'll be great. And when you use the wrong techniques, you don't just fail, which is bad enough, you can actually make things worse. If someone feels offended, insulted, belittled by the techniques you're using on them, when someone else comes along later, they'll be like, oh, we had someone come and suggest that. It was terrible. Don't talk about it. We're not doing it. Using the wrong kinds of techniques on the people you're trying to change can actively backfire, not just for you, but for this change spearheaded by someone else later. Still on the idea of who you're trying to change. Sometimes we don't try to change the people who we want to change. We try to change someone else who will then influence them for us. So I pretty much have read this verbatim in various places. I want no more forums, and they're always complaining about forums, telling people to do things the C way because they just don't like the vibe of the STL. And I'm with you. I meet those people who don't like the vibe of the STL, right? Who are hurt by a sort algorithm in 2002 and have never gotten over it. And I want to take them and tell them to stop telling people that, a while loop with a pointer incremented in the middle of it is the only possible way to tackle any given problem. But I consciously decided a long time ago that I'm happier saying I want to teach people that the STL is not that bad. It's not the thing that you remember, or worse, were told about from 2002. Here's what it is today, and here's why you can use it. And it's really about influencing the influencers versus being an influencer. And it feels really appealing, like if I could just influence the influencers, that'd be such a great force multiplier. They would go out and spread the story for me and I would be done. But because when you motivate people, you have to know what the benefit is for them. The benefit of being an influencer who likes the STL is not the same as the benefit of being someone who uses the STL, right? They're different. And so you have to know which one you're trying to take on. So for me, I prefer just be an influencer, and the influencers can learn from me and change their minds if they want to, and then they'll be on team whatever it is I'm trying to be on. But it's tempting. Oh, it's a real shortcut. I'll just persuade those Reddit people who are a famously monolithic group and easy to persuade. You see the flaw? Yeah. Because you have to face the reality of who you can influence. If you want to make any change whatsoever in your smallest corner, you have to persuade someone to do something they wouldn't have otherwise done. Okay. Maybe you have some authority from the place you work. Maybe you're the team lead. The team lead can say, hey, there are not enough tests on this project. Excellent. Maybe you're not anybody's boss, nobody reports to you, but you're the something person. You're the security person, you're the performance person, you're the Git person, And it may be an official title, or it may just be what everyone knows. And in that role, you can say that things have to be different. And if someone doesn't listen to you, there is someone with authority who you can go to and say, hey, they're not listening to me. Make them listen to me. And that generally works. If you don't have official authority, something on your badge, something on your business card, metaphorical business card, you may still be seen as an expert, but be aware that the world is full of experts who genuinely are full of expertise. They're doctors, they're researchers, they've been doing something for 30 years, but that expertise is not recognized by the audience they're trying to reach. So it's not enough to be an expert. Are you seen as an expert? Those are different. And then maybe you have some leverage, maybe you have some force multipliers, maybe you have some friends, right? So if you have an audience, if you already have a role as the performance consultant in that other organization, then you can say, well, you know, I charge for this advice to that other group, but I'll tell you it for free, that kind of thing. And don't overlook the value of a title. You know, what does it mean to be the editor of, the convener of, the lead of some organization or another? You know, like I'm on the board of C++ Toronto. Wow, she must really understand ranges, right? Like, no, but people they think that, right? So you may have something like that you can use to hold yourself up as having been evaluated by other people and found good enough, at least in some way. This is the step that most people are they want to gloss right over. You have to stand in this moment and say, who can I change? Not convince on the spot right away, but get it going. Give them a bit of a nudge. Start to persuade them. Start to convince them. That's what influencing is. Who can you change? Is that who you're trying to change, or a subset of who you're trying to change? That's good news. But sometimes it's not. It's like all my teammates agree that I'm right, but the boss does not. Standing in this moment is really hard, and it's uncomfortable if the number of people you can change is small. The temptation is to race right past that and say, it'll be fine, it'll work out, and just get started. And that way lies misery. You have to stand in this moment and become aware. Because it's possible there's nobody you can convince right now. And it's especially likely if you're just starting out. You're too young to know anything about that. You don't have the experience. You don't have a track record with us, so we don't know who you are and what you can do. Nobody's put you in charge of anything. And especially if you are part of a historically excluded population, which statistically most of us are on one axis or another. If you don't have a platform, if you don't have an audience, if you don't have those multipliers, it's just you, and you are all these not there yet things, it's possible there's no one you can convince. And that's all the more the case when you don't have a concise, quick argument that immediately convinces people. You can overcome the first two bullets if you have something that when I hear the sentence, I go, oh yeah, you're right, we totally should do that. But if you've got just a vague not this and no really good reasoning, and you don't pull on any authority, then there's no one you can convince. And if there's no one you can convince, you can't start making this change. Some changes maybe you really truly cannot ever make. For those who are not familiar with the phrase tilting at windmills, in Don Quixote, a crazy old man believes that the windmills on the skyline are an invading army, and that he's the only one who's seen them, and he needs to deal with them and be a hero. It's obviously a failed quest, right? Not going to happen. If you're trying to change something about your company, your industry, your country, it's hard to know whether you're taking on something that's just really, really difficult or that's actually structurally impossible, right? Because there are things out there that are very hard to change. But there are also things that do not need to be changed. And if you're giving people your argument and not getting anywhere, one explanation is that you're wrong. And you do have to be alert to that possibility. You could be wrong. Or you could be doing something that is a decades-long or generations-long change. And I'm old enough now to have seen decades-long and generational-long changes in what we as a society are okay with, but also in stuff like how we program, right? I mean, these things do slowly change. Should you take on a 50-year project as your first change project? No. So it doesn't really matter whether it's impossible or whether it's going to take 50 years. It's not necessary for you to figure out which of those two things applies. It's not where you start. Instead, think about smaller goals, ideally that lead towards your end goal, so that it's actually something tractable. Now, the best force multiplier you can get is to not be alone. Get some people to join you. when we said, oh, I can't convince anyone. Like 0, as we know as programmers, is an incredibly special number. Is it really 0 exactly? Because not many and 0 are different. If you can just get one more person to join team No More Writing JSON Parsers, now you have your combined change power. And if that person is your boss and has institutional authority, you might be done. Okay? But even if they're not, maybe they have a really great example. Maybe they have a really great analogy. Or maybe they just have connections and they can get more people to join team No More Writing JSON Parsers. This is almost certainly not an African proverb. I did some searching, but it's still valid. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. There will be frustrations and difficulties of getting people on board, but it's going to be worth it. But then some people will say, hey, come on now. First you want me to change the world, then you want me to recruit people to my Changing the World team? Okay, find a group and join them. People who are doing something that you care about, like running user groups and conferences in Toronto on a language you use. That's an option. Join and start helping. Now you're working towards the stuff you care about, simple as that. If they are, yeah, but, like I like that group, but, once you've joined and started working, you can work on the but. If you think the group is meeting at a time of day that only includes people with office jobs in downtown Toronto, see what you can do about that. If you think the group should have a more global focus or a more local focus, work on that. If you just want it to be bigger, work on that. Now you are working towards those goals you set yourself, but you're also getting really important experience at leading change. Because that's a separate set of skills to get better at making changes in things and to persuade people to do what you want. And it's best achieved by just doing it. Start small, work your way up. And speaking of starting small, if you evaluate who do I need to change, who can I change, and it's intractable, scale down. There are 2 ways to scale down. One is to ask for a smaller change. A lot of people are like, we should switch to test-driven development. Has anyone ever made their team switch? I'm looking and I'm looking, there's no hands, right? That's a hard thing to switch a team. But we should have more tests. You can do that. And then when you've done that enough, then the benefit becomes, well, we'll have more tests, and everyone knows why that's good. I know there's people here who've tried to change C++. I've tried to change C++. That's a really hard thing to do. Change the way we use C++. That's a much smaller and more tractable change. Let C++ be itself. Here's how we're going to use it. Get rid of something. Show people what they can use instead of something. Much smaller change. Who cares if something persists as long as we're all using the alternative? Rewrite our flagship product in Rust. Any takers? You can always find people on the forums who want to rewrite everything in Rust, but people who actually write software all day long are probably more comfortable with, let's use Rust on one of our little utility companion app things that isn't staking the company's livelihood on it. But you can keep the same change and just change your target audience. So instead of getting all the X to do Y, you can get the X, developers, whatever, that I'm part of and that I know to do Y. Deal with the rest of the world later after you deal with this, your team, your company, your organization. Changing your industry is hard. Changing your company is hard. Changing your team, that's tractable. And it can be a sub-goal of reaching those larger groups later, right? It doesn't have to be, but if it is, it puts you can feel like you're following a path to where you want to get to. Now, 2 things about a smaller change that are good. The first is that the risk is less. I told you, and it remains indefinitely true, advocating for change carries risk. But the smaller the change, the smaller the risk. You're not saying we should throw away everything we've done, so people aren't going to think it's important to oppose you. And smaller changes are more likely to get accepted, more likely to succeed when they happen, less likely to bankrupt the company. So smaller is better. you can also work on building up your own change power in parallel with taking on a smaller thing. Because when you think about that list, why you can't influence anyone, you're young. Okay, well, get older. This one's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. We're all getting older at 1 second per second. I have a whole 90-minute talk on how to get older well, but this is just a matter of being, now you're not 23 anymore, you're 24 because it's been a year since you started trying to do this. At the same time, you're gaining experience and getting yourself visible. People ask, why should I be visible? Why should people know my name? Blah, blah. This is part of why, right? Nobody knows who you are. Well, you can fix that. You know, if you spent a year making sure people know who you are, then people will know who you are. And if you realize that having some authority, like being a team lead, lets you change things and make things better, then maybe you'll feel a little differently about moving into management, which none of us ever want to do. But this is why you move into management, because then you can change things. You can build an audience, start a podcast, everybody else has, blog, put stuff on YouTube. Like there's lots of ways that you can get known, not just within your team, but outside your team. And that's becoming an influencer. And if you're going to do these things, these are all individual skills that you can get better at independently of being a good programmer, right? So if you're going to do public speaking, you can learn how to speak well. If you're going to blog, you can learn what makes a blog work. How is it different from an essay? How is it different from a paper that you're submitting to a standards committee? If you're going to use social media to advance a cause, how do you get good at social media? There's skills to all of this. If you want to be the person on the subway who says, hey, not cool, leave them alone, you can take courses on how to be the person on the subway who says, hey, not cool, leave them alone. So if these are the tools you're going to use to change the world, get good at these tools. And in all of this, you are actually learning how to affect change and being seen as someone who knows how to make change happen, which are two separate things. And folks are skeptical about this. I don't know why. Like, you know, you get better at programming by programming. You know that some people are fantastic debuggers and some of them are terrible. It's the same with every single thing we try to take on in this world. If you want to lead people to a different state, having done that before shows that you know how to do it. Some of it is a belief on their part. Oh, you helped a team adopt Git. Like, we already have Git, but I think those skills will be useful when we move to Rust, right? Because it's not about knowing how Git works that helps you bring a team onto Git, right? And so that knowledge, that experience, people are like, yeah, you know about the resistances, you know about the problems, and you got past them for that thing, you'll get past them for this thing. And some of it is because you genuinely do learn about the problems and how to get past them and learn what it takes to get change to happen. When you trust yourself and you are confident, like I'm a person who changes things, that makes you a person who changes things. You kind of shine a little, and it's valid. But I still didn't tell you what you do. When I said you got to decide what you want, you got to figure out who you need to change, but you got to change people, right? You have to actually convince and persuade and influence and nudge so that somebody does something they would not have otherwise done. In the general case, it's very simple. You give them information and you ask them to change. The information might be the benefits of it, the cost of it, the story of someone else doing it, testimonials, background, history. Well, you see, in the beginning, in 1491, some level of information, and then you ask people to do what it is you want them to do. Is that the order? No, it depends. You might ask and then provide background. You might give a little bit of background and then the ask. You might give years of background and then the ask. Depends, as does how much of each you do. So I thought I'd give you some samples. The very simplest thing to do is to ask the right question at the right time. It contains the tiniest payload of information and no background, and it works. Here's our new website for our company, our conference, the recruiting page for our company, blah, blah, blah. And you look it over and you say, hey, how come all the pictures are of white men in their 30s? And you know you've been to this website. And you don't need to give a big speech about how women hold up half the sky, or if you look around, you'll see that 80% of our people are not white, or whatever. Everybody already knows all of that. They just accidentally built a website that doesn't reflect that. So when you ask, why does our website look like that? Somebody will be embarrassed and somebody will fix the website. You're done. User documentation and examples. This used to be my job 20 or 30 years ago, and you would have Jim, Steve, Bill, Mike, over and over and over. No women, and all of the names from this one very small ethnic community. And you're like, why is there no Andre? Why is there no Noor? Why is there no Susan? Right? Like, this is a really cheap thing to do. Fix the names in your user examples. And again, you don't need to point out the names of the people around the table. When you ask the question, enlightenment will occur. Who's heard the story of the soap dispenser that only gives soap to white people? Yeah, right? And there's a video of like, white person puts their hand under the soap dispenser, burp, out comes the soap. Person of color, no soap. They have to put a paper towel on their hand in order to pass and get soap from the soap dispenser. I keep meeting people who are doing biometric things and doing them only on themselves. I met a team many years ago, before I had melanoma, so over 10 years ago, who were doing a melanoma detecting thing, which would take pictures of moles and do machine learning on it. They were all white, and they were all young, and all their samples were themselves. Again, just asking, did you test your biometric thing on a nice, diverse group of people, or just yourselves? You don't need the rest of the speech. They'll know. Alex Chan asked this many years ago at a talk. How could a vengeful ex use this product to hurt someone? And it doesn't even need to be exes. I mean, I can't believe AirTags were released and some number of months went by before you got the thing where your phone would say, hey, there's an AirTag with you that you're not paired with. That didn't come out on day one. Nobody realized they needed it. The right question at the right time would have solved that problem. And very, very few people ask, how could a vengeful ex use this product? But if you've ever had experience, even second, third, fourth hand, then you know and you ask. And you make things better. Now, the questions are great because you don't have to explain. People know, you're just reminding them. Sometimes you do have to explain. And you say, here's what we should do. We should redo our website. We should have more tests. We should. You absolutely have to tell people what you want them to do. But I want you to compare two ways of asking. Someone who isn't you deserves something they aren't getting, so I need you to make some sacrifices, give things up, work hard, because I need that person to have a better life. That's how we often ask people to make changes. It doesn't really work very well. What works a lot better is if you do what I'm suggesting, you'll get the following benefits. Your life will be better. And almost every change can be phrased both ways. It seems like noble and altruistic to come forward and talk about like our duty to society, but you're going to actually get places when you say, we could double our market share. We could have 3 times as many people applying for our jobs. That gets action. In fact, anger, anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, these are known to be demotivators. They make people not take action. Oh, I feel really bad. What's important is don't do anything right now. So when you want someone to take an action, you cannot connect to those emotions in them. You need to connect to like this vision of a brighter future. Then they'll take action to get there. But now here comes the rub. You need to know what motivates your target. There's no point telling someone how much money they'll save if they don't care. I've had clients where the project manager managed the project by how the money was being spent. And if you saved money, you were clearly running behind the schedule. So they did not want to save money. They needed to spend all the money. And I've had slightly saner clients where if we don't spend all the money, we don't get it next year. So when you're talking to these people and you say, we could save $20,000, they're like, what's wrong with you? Why would I do that? Got to know what they care about. Some places have mission statements. Warning, these are sometimes a lie. But you could try. Might be true. lots of folks money, getting more, spending less. And to a huge extent, people care about reputation. If you're trying to get a conference to do something, they want to know that the speakers will come. They want to know that the attendees will come. Companies need to hire people. Companies need to sell their product. And individuals are concerned about their legacy and what they leave behind. And when you can push on those buttons, you can change things. Everybody likes to avoid hassle and trouble and arguments and embarrassment. And you don't exactly threaten with these. It's more like, I have an idea that might help you avoid the inevitable trouble that's coming your way. People want personal rewards. If they're a politician, they want to get elected. If they have a job, they want to get promoted. They want to be rewarded and acknowledged for their goodness. And so if you want to work with someone and get them to do what you want, you have to know which of these things matter to them so you don't waste your time hammering on something they don't care about. But it may also mean that you are talking to someone who you profoundly disagree with, and at least at first, not talking about your profound disagreement. Okay? And it can be very difficult to say, look, we both agree that we want, and let's work together to get that, while you profoundly disagree on something. But you can find something that you do agree on. Sometimes things are the way they are for reasons no one's ever going to admit. So this company was founded by a racist, so he's got a list of universities we'll take from, and he based it on the ethnic composition of those universities. And he's gone, but we still use the list. And it's really tempting to try to surface that and say, this is the most racist list of universities that there ever was, and it should be abandoned and blah, blah, blah. But then people will shut down and feel threatened. So you want to focus on that benefit of, like, if you opened up to more universities, you'd get some great candidates. And it can feel like you're letting them get away with their racist founder by not surfacing it. But if you want it to change, sometimes a little pragmatism goes a long way. As I said before, talking about what's fair does not work as well as talking about what will get you more applicants, more employees, more customers, more whatever it is they're after, benefits. And then this one, really, I get so much resistance from this. Right now, there's a big push to get people off certain platforms. Unfortunately, there are multiple platforms that are like, that's a really Nazi platform. Let's take Twitter as an example, but there are others. And you want to persuade them to move to some other platform. When they do, you want to promote them. You want to say, hey, everybody welcome username who just moved off platform we all hate to this platform. Good for them, yay. And you want to do that for 3 reasons. The first is for them, right? Give them a reward. They did what you said. And I've had people, especially in groups, say, I'm not praising them for doing that. They didn't do that because they wanted to. They only did that because we asked them to. Yes, that's why we asked them. That was the whole damn point, right? They weren't going to do it alone. We persuaded them. They deserve praise for listening to us and doing what we asked. Second, I deserve praise. It's a chance to blow my own horn and say, look, I got that person to do what I want. But third, and probably most important, is the people who are thinking about your message haven't acted on it yet. They see rewards for acting on the message, they're more likely to come on over to the light side. So always praise people for doing what you want, even though they only did it because you asked them to. Yes, that's correct. That's why you're here. That's the point. You can also continue to loop back on the benefits. So I've read repeatedly that when people move from, say, Twitter to Blue Sky, they get less followers, but they get way more engagement from those followers. And you want, if somebody posts like, hey, I've only been here a week, but I'm getting way more click-throughs, you retweet that. You make sure everybody sees that so they understand the benefits of making the change. Now, a very powerful technique, almost as powerful as a question at the right time, is to give a good example or to give a good analogy, where when you give the information, the we should is just wrapped right up in it, and there's really no big, long conversation. Because inertia is so powerful. If the right thing is the easy thing, people do the right thing. And our brains are weird, but if you give something a name, not only is it easy to remind each other about it, but it actually changes the information from something Kate said once to this well-known law of human nature, because it has a name. Naming is hard, right? But naming is also powerful. So I'm going to give you 2 examples, and honestly, if these are the only things you take from my talk, I will have succeeded in changing your world. The first you can practice this week. It's called the Pac-Man move. Pac-Man's shape, for those of you who are born in this century, is not a complete circle. There is a gap, and that's the deal. So you're any place where people are standing around talking, such as at our breaks. I learned about this at ACCU, but this blog has a good write-up of it with a cartoon from overhead demonstrating how it's done. But basically the deal is you don't form a closed circle. You're standing in a circle of 4 people, stand at a spacing that has room for 5 and leave that 5th spot empty. And that welcomes people to come up and join you. When they do, say, oh, we should Pac-Man, name, and shuffle around so now there's room for 6 and there's another empty spot. That keeps the conversation going. And I've been doing this now for many years. I've watched other people do it, and it really works. When those circles get bigger, the conversations get better. And the folks who are at a conference by themselves, maybe for the first time, not sure who to talk to how, they're joining more conversations, they're having a better time. It is an absolutely gift, not just to them, but to you. You'll have a better conversation by leaving room for more people to join it. The other analogy is the Nazi bar. I've got a link here in my slides to the Blue Sky version. I first saw it on Twitter by Michael B. Tager. He tells it better, but I'll try. He's in a bar. Someone comes in and sits down next to him. He doesn't really notice him. The bartender, before the person can even order any drink, says, nope, get out. And there's a little bit of argument, and the bartender reaches down to where there's a bat everyone knows there's a bat under the bar, and the person leaves. And our hero looks a little bit puzzled, and the bartender says, well, you didn't look at him. He was covered in Nazi symbols, not just swastikas, all kinds of Nazi symbols. So, right, he wasn't causing any trouble. He just ordered a drink. And the bartender says, well, that's how it works. They come in, they sit down, they're quiet, they're polite, they order a drink, they pay their bill, they tip well, they leave. Nothing to complain about, right? They come back, and they come back. One day they come with a friend. They're still a great customer. Order, quiet, pay, tip, go, everything's great. Then both guys come and each bring a friend. One day you look up and you're running a Nazi bar. 80% Nazis in the bar. There's someone hung some posters on the wall. You're outnumbered because you just let it slide. Hasn't done anything wrong yet. And I hear this all the time on Discords and Slacks and stuff. Yeah, that's a pretty offensive profile picture, but you haven't broken any rules yet. Well, A, there are rules, so we can totes make a rule that says no offensive profile pictures. But B, always the yet. Right? In the version of the story where the Nazi-bedecked fellow sits down at the bar, he hasn't done anything bad yet. We're all pretty confident they're going to. Why are we obliged to wait until they punch someone? We are not. And when you understand that, then the analogy of Nazi bar being applied to all kinds of places, you're like, oh, I get it. We're not going to allow even the mildest version of this behavior because we don't want to hold space for the extreme version of this behavior later. And it's a good analogy. If people have already heard it, you can explain, that's why I kicked that person. I'm not running a Nazi bar. Yeah, okay, I get it. But of course, you don't always have a handy saying. So, what am I trying to change? Why do I think it's good? Which might be because it's fair. It might be because it's the decent thing to do. It's because I feel a sense of obligation. Okay, set that aside. What motivates your target? Go with the reasons that will move them, even if they are not the main reasons. Even if the real reason is about fairness and obligation and duty, what will motivate your audience? So I mentioned Stop Teaching C. I recorded this in September of 2015, so we're just about at the 10-year mark. And it's just about at 175,000 views. It's 173,000 last time I looked. And I watched it again to see what I did. And as a trainer, say, what is the benefit to a trainer of doing something? Yeah, your course could be easier, less practice, something like that. That's one benefit. But the number one benefit as a trainer is more work. Every time you do a course, you want to get more work out of it. And the way you get more work out of it is either the individuals enjoy the course or their bosses see an important difference in them when they come back from the course. Those two things get you repeat business. By 40 seconds into this course, I had said, if you do what I say, your course will be more fun for the attendees and will make them better C++ programmers. 40 seconds. I think that's one of the reasons the talk worked. Here's what's in it for you. You don't just owe the world or owe the language that you should teach differently now. You can be a happier trainer if you do this. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I said, you can make C++ an easier language to learn. So I honestly believed then and believe now that most of the reputation for C++ being difficult is that we teach you a ton of C stuff and then say, but forget all that, here's the other thing you actually have to do. And I thought that was counterproductive. I did eventually talk about fairness and niceness and that kind of stuff, but mostly for the whole talk, I just hammered, people will like your course, people will like your language, and that I think is one of the reasons why it worked. People wanted to be able to get around to covering lambdas in an intro to C++ course, which in those days they did not because they spent so long on literally printf format strings, that people will learn what actually makes C++, and they'll have a good time and they'll tell people your course was pleasant. That's all actionable work for someone who I'm going to ask to do the ton of effort of rearranging the entire course they teach. But I said it's ask and give information in whatever combinations and permutations are right for the thing you're trying to do. A lot of times when you come with we should, whoever's hearing you thinks they already know what that will cost. That would make it take twice as long. I don't know how to do that. People will make fun of us for doing it that way. They have these costs in their head while the sentence is coming out of your mouth. You provide the benefits at the same sentence as the ask. So again, compare. I think we should X. Put in your own X here. I think we should speed up our releases by X. I think we should improve our employee retention by X. So the benefit is right there in the ask. So whatever costs they're holding up are now against that. And of course, context is everything. Like if you've just had a horrible release, this is a great time for I think we should improve our release process, right? If you've had 3 smooth releases in a row, you're not going to get the same attention. If you have information to back you up, make it easy to consume. When I had 10 staff, there were several people on the team who used to send me links to videos. And I mean an email with a subject line like interesting ? And a body that was a link to something on YouTube. That was the entirety of the ask. Don't do that. It's not because it's rude, it's because it's pointless. Add me one sentence. Here is a 1 hour, 5 minute video podcast by name, who is a whatever, about how they, and I think we should too. If you've just watched the video, you can type that sentence as fast as you can type. Like there's no effort in composing it, and now I might choose to watch it. Don't just plonk links on people. If you're going to offer a great book, this book changed everything. We should buy copies for everyone on the department. Why? What's it about? What everything did it change? Okay? Summarize. And if you have personal experience, that always counts for so much. So someone says, it'll take too long. You'd be like, really? It took 2 days on a 6-month project. It was no big deal. You counter it before they even say it. Because people will say things, and people will object. And some of the objections will be really technical. Okay, they'll be like, that will double our cloud storage bill. Okay. But I wanted to draw your attention to 3 particular objections that you hear a lot because they sound like deal stoppers. Oh, no defense. We can't do anything about that. But they're not. So we don't need to make that official. I heard this when we were trying to get the code of conducts on conferences. We already treat each other perfectly well. We're all professionals here. There's no need for any of that administrivia. Oh, you don't like how we're doing it? Well, this is how we've always done it, and nobody else minds. Hear that one a lot? And my fave, why are there no women speaking at your conference? Why do only white men win this award? Why don't you hire anyone who didn't go to one of these 10 universities? Oh, we can't control who applies. These all sound like you're done, but in fact, these are all super easy to absolutely demolish. So you start with, we don't need to make that official, right? What they're doing is close enough. Your change is small, unimportant, not worth anyone's time. And the natural reaction is saying, no, you're wrong. You're not doing that. Let me tell you 6 things that happened last year. No. Here's this judo move. You go, oh, so you agree. This is the right thing to do. And it's no big deal at all to write it up. That's fantastic. I'll help you write it up. You know, it's just a tiny little thing. It's no big deal. I'm glad we're totally aligned here and we're going to do it. Wonderful. If you think this is a person who cares about their reputation, you know, let's make sure that whoever comes after continues to do the right thing, you know, like we're doing, because you're totally doing the right thing. And your head may be full of how they are not doing the right thing, and I get it. But if they're willing to write down that they're going to do the right thing from now on, help them write it down. We want to make sure that, you know, everyone else knows they can count on us, going for their reputation again. Everyone else is fine with it. You heard this? I've been told more times than I can tell you, you're the first person to complain. And it sets off a flag for me, and I investigate, and it has never been true. Never. I know one particular teacher who apparently didn't realize that the parents talked to each other, who told no fewer than 7 mothers that they were the first person to complain. Okay. But here's the rebuttal. Everyone else is fine with it who is here. That is, it's probably a lie. But don't worry about that for a minute. Take it at face value. The people who are here are the people who don't mind that thing. But not everyone's here, right? Who are you missing? Maybe this is why you were missing them. Have you been wondering how to attract more historically excluded population? There's lots of them. Have you never occurred to you that like the reason no one in a wheelchair comes to your meetings is because they're held at the top of a flight of stairs, that kind of thing? And like people will literally say, we don't need an elevator for our meeting because nobody in a wheelchair comes to our meeting. Who, back to benefits, who could be a superstar for you if you changed this? Who could you bring that you're excluding now? And you may have stories about this of someone you know who left or didn't join or didn't apply for something because of a policy. You don't know about them because you didn't meet them, but they would have been fantastic if you'd have met them. Go with the benefits. We can't control who applies. Oh, it's such a shame. Like we would have loved to, but nobody applied. It's your job. That's literally your job. This is the rebuttal to this. If you are the HR person who puts out job ads and collects job responses, it is your job to control who applies. If no one applied at all, you put ads on all the things and got 0 responses, you would not go, oh, well, you know, you can't control who applies. I still get paid, right? No, you do something about it. But when no women apply, when no people from a different geography apply, when no people from a different age range apply, you go, oh, well. And that's not about them. That's about saying, oh, well, saying it's okay. And like, I get that it's hard. What do you do when no people from a particular group submit to your conference? You figure out how to make your conference appealing to those people and get the word out. And it may take time. But it's not just about reaching people. I'm not going to bother submitting to something if I don't think I'll be considered seriously. I'm not going to go through a process that I believe has no chance of success. And I'm not going to try to get into a place where I think I won't be safe when I get there. So it's way more than just having these excluded people see it and choose to apply. You have to know why they're not applying. So this is work. This is not the, oh, we're just going to write down that we should be nice to each other. This is work. But again, if people are, oh, I feel so desperately sad that the wrong people are applying for my thing, it's like, it's your thing. figure out how to make the right people apply for it. Are you guaranteed success if you follow my simple multi-step process? No. You're going to fail. Everyone fails sometimes, right? We're all very, very smart people. And many of us write C++ every day. And many of us write C++ and say, nailed it. And turns out we did not nail it. It's going to be the same here. Sometimes you will be trying to persuade people of something and they just won't listen. They won't find your argument convincing. They won't do the thing you want them to do. Other times you'll get a pile of people on board. There'll be like a groundswell of something, but one manager or one influencer torpedo the whole thing. So even though you had a lot of folks on board, change does not happen. Or you will get a change made completely and thoroughly, and when you're done, you'll find out that was not correct. That is also a failure. That does happen. But hey, you won't be wondering what if, right? You'll know you tried. And you will learn. I talked about the effort of learning how to change, learning how to lead change, learning how to be seen as a changer. Even on failed initiatives, you get these lessons. You get a chance to iterate. If you were unable to persuade someone because you believed them, like I've had this where people are like, we value X. Like, fantastic. As someone who values X, you should totally Y. And like, I've got the receipts, I've got all the proof. It's absolutely true that everyone who values X should 100% do Y. Turns out they don't value X. They just say they value X. They don't. And that's why they're not going to do Y no matter what I say or do. You may get a chance to iterate and say, okay, what do you value? Let's try this again. And of course, you don't fail every time. There will be times that you succeed. So it's good. There is something to think about, especially when you're taking on really big changes. People can threaten you. I know a lot of people who've been told to stop doing certain things by their employers. You know, because they got a nasty email. Is this the kind of person you want representing you? Right? And the easiest thing for them to do is to say, no, we don't want any controversy whatsoever. We don't want anyone like that representing us. And maybe they fire you and maybe they tell you to stop doing that. They don't put any thought into whether what you're doing is good, bad, wrong. Doesn't matter. They just don't want bad publicity. But I also know people who've been threatened with physical harm. I know people who have been fired. I know people who've had untrue rumors spread about them to make them, less authoritarian. Oh, would you believe them? Why, they're a known embezzler. And people have had threats to their families and their friends. It's real. Nobody came at me with like the pro teaching C++ the old way campaign was going to burn down my house. Like I've never been threatened for that behavior. But there are things that have had real consequences in the real world for people. As a slightly good sign, it doesn't happen if you're Don Quixote, like the windmills didn't start a campaign to teach him a lesson. That people have to actually feel like you're getting somewhere and maybe threatening them. If you've got someone who objectively on a skills level would be 7th out of 10, but on having the same hobbies as the guy who does the hiring level is 2nd or 3rd out of 10, they're going to feel very threatened at any changes to the hiring process. And they're going to do maybe unpleasant things to keep things the way they are so that they can have their unfair advantage still. So it can be a good sign, but it's not a very pleasant good sign, right? When you stand up on a principle, it can hurt you. Look, it can hurt you in the mildest ways. If you were to make a big, long 10-minute speech at the team meeting about how everybody should be on time and being late is rude, when no one's ever late, then people are going to be, what is wrong with this person? We're not late. You just use up 10 minutes to tell us something we all learned in kindergarten, and you are lessened by having stood up and made this inappropriate speech. But if there's someone who is always late, and they have a fair amount of social power, they may feel threatened, they may make your life unpleasant. So even on really minor things, you can be hurt by taking a principled stand. So be smart. I do all my stuff under my real name. And it is kind of a power move. You say, I'm not worried, come at me. Maybe not everybody can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing things under a pseudonym. You don't have to use your real name. People don't have to know where you work, right? Is that necessary? Does that bring credibility to what you're doing, who your employer is? If you're part of a team, you can look out for each other, stick up for each other, support each other, but think about what you need to release. If you're going to use your real name, your real employer, your real location, that's a lot of data you're putting out into the world. Is it necessary for whatever it is you're trying to achieve? Like, let's use more community libraries. Do I need to know where you live in order to believe you on that? Probably not. I talk about this more in the Aging Programmer, but as time goes by, what you can risk changes. Right? Like if someone comes to me and says, you'll never work in this town again, don't threaten me with a good time. Like, but if you're young and you're just starting out and people are like, you'll never get a government contract with this on your record, be aware of that. That's a real thing. So keep that in mind. And if you're feeling threatened, if you're getting pushback that feels personally dangerous, remember the slide about try something smaller? That might be a place for you to go for a little while. Time goes by, you get older, you get more authority, but also what we as a society agree to changes, and you may be able to do that work again later. Now, I have some sayings that I like to say, and I didn't manage to work them into the other slides, so I'm going to just hammer them at you on this slide. The first one's probably the most important. If it was easy, anyone could do it. I have been telling myself this for like 35 years. Yeah, sometimes it's hard. Lots of things are hard, but you've chosen to do it. So the fact that it's not easy right now doesn't mean you get to not do it. You're doing it. Keep going. A lot of times I'll be like, I can't do much, but here's what I can do. And all I can do, however big or small it is, that is literally all that I can do. Luckily, that is often a remarkable amount and it makes a difference. And the same will be true for you. It may seem like it's really small, but it can be enough. Somebody should. This is your chance to be somebody. Everybody wants to be somebody, so that would be a good chance. You've persuaded the group that somebody should. Maybe one of them will pick up the torch, but maybe you are actually just asking for permission for yourself to do it, and that's cool. I used to tell my staff all the time, yep, it's not your fault, totally not your fault, but it is our problem. And we all find ourselves with those things, and focusing on it's not your fault isn't going to help anyone. What are you going to do about it? You going to change things? Going to make them better? Okay. If not you, who? If not now, when? I know this was a very information-dense. We'll put the slides somewhere, but in addition, I'm going to summarize a little bit. First, you decide that you want to change something. And you need to be precise. You can't be not this. You need to be precise about what it is that you want to change. Then figure out who your target is. What motivates your target? It's just like so early on the slide, people don't want it here. People want it at the bottom of the slide, but you can't proceed until you know who you're trying to change and what will make them do something they would not have otherwise done. Then you've got to evaluate your change power. And if you are young and inexperienced and not well known, all of that may be quite small. And you may need to say, I need a smaller scoped change than what my change power can achieve today. Then you do the work, and it is work. Who's my audience? How do I reach them? How do I build up my reputation, my audience, my leverage, my platform, my influence? Best way, get some company. Right? Teams are stronger, teams are safer, teams will keep you happier. And those people have ideas. They are actually not non-player characters. They also have brains and friends and connections and history, all of which will help the cause. The actual mechanics are simple. You ask for the change and you give information. I gave you some tools like questions, examples, stories, iterating when it doesn't work, going back around again, all of that. But the fundamental core is we should, or you should, or somebody should, and some facts between half a sentence and 52 pages. Something in that range. And as you go along, you may need to move down to smaller changes because you don't have the power to pull off the changes you're doing. But you may also move on to bigger changes because you're growing and you have a bigger team, you have more change power, you have a bigger audience. Take on something bigger. Continue to make things happen. And as you win, celebrate. Celebrate for yourself, celebrate for the people who listen to you, and celebrate for the people who are thinking about listening to you and who might just tip over when they see there's celebrations involved. Maybe not ice cream balloons and cake, but then again, maybe ice cream balloons and cake. Because the individual changes may be small, but if you want to, you can change the world. Thank you. Sure, Florist Bob has a microphone. We have a little time for questions. Sherry here.
I think you hinted at this with bring the elevator back down, but let's get a little more explicit.
Sure.
During a modified Take Your Children to Work day at work, Mike Bloomberg stood up in front of a group of 13-year-olds talking about closing down coal mines and stopping global warming, and a kid raises his hand and says, "I'm 13. What can I do?" And without missing a beat, Mike said, mentor somebody. It is the one time you can change the world and absolutely watch it happen.
Yes.
So I would like to add that these small changes add up. Guys, if nothing else, mentor somebody.
I like that. Thank you. Back here. We have one mic or two? Okay, come over here while he's getting back to the other ones. I don't know who was first. Go with Amir.
Thank you, Kate, for great talk, as always. You started, or the goal is, we know what is a problem, and we know how to fix it.
It's easy if you know what the problem is and how to fix it. It's harder if you don't know either of those, yes?
My view, and it would be a suggestion, that even if we know what is the problem and we know what is the solution, the path would be, we think we know what is the problem and we think we know what is the solution, and then it was in the talk, but I think maybe not emphasized enough, listen, which means come with, and it goes against the precise. No, I don't want to be precise. I want to ask questions because maybe somebody else, and maybe somebody who, this goes with the elevator going down.
Right.
Maybe somebody else sees the problem in a different angle or has a different solution that we want to discuss. So thinking about, I'm not sure. I have something in mind. Maybe I have a solution, but I prefer not to put the solution on the table, but come and discuss and listen as a first choice. And you get also buy-in by people being able to come up with their view. So this is my...
And some of this is framing, right? Like there is a difference between, I wish more women worked here, and I wish we were more welcoming to women.
I agree.
They're not the same.
I agree that this is framing, but I'm saying that it is more than that. It's like an actual difference in the mindset of, if I see something wrong, and even if I'm sure that, yeah, this is not the right thing, then I would try to lower my belief of I know to I think. And then I believe that it might be that I would not reach an actual win because I'm putting other people's thoughts in the process. But I feel that this is some kind of getting the elevator down.
And definitely the more people you involve, the more likely you'll find the actual solution rather than what you first thought was the solution. Yes.
Thanks for the talk. I wonder if you could share some examples of the times you failed to drive change.
It's probably better not to use actual names. But there are organizations that I would have very much liked to have been involved with that took positions that I couldn't handle. And I begged them to change those positions, and they did not and were not involved, which is an ongoing sadness for me, but that's how it is. And in most of those cases, I treated people as teammates and peers who did not share that opinion. In some of those cases, I also listened when they said, we really value X, and no, they didn't. Naming names would be unfair, but you can't motivate people with stuff that doesn't motivate them, and you can't always trust people when they tell you what motivates them. And you can't treat someone as a friend and compatriot and arm-in-arm buddy when they see you as an adversary. It doesn't help if you just say, no, listen, buddy, we're on the same side. We want the same thing. They just don't believe you. And they may even be right. We may not want the same thing. Turns out. So it's like the hard part, knowing who you're trying to change and knowing what motivates them. People don't want to start with that. They want to just start like broadcasting and radiating this obvious truth. And that's not the first step. The first step is much more difficult. And if you get it wrong, you're just, when I look back over the two biggest problems that I've had, I was wrong from the first step. It was never going to succeed. Now I can see that. Not at the time. I put a lot of effort into those for nothing. Yeah. Oh, well, I learned. Over here?
Yes. So I wanted to bring up an interesting kind of question which wasn't brought up in your talk is, what if your change that you want is for people to compromise? What if you have two groups which have completely different opinion? Like
right.
One says we should do X every day, another says X is evil, we should not do it at all.
Right.
And they're fighting with each other pretty much every day or whatever. And you say, what about doing X once or twice a week? And that way, how to make that change happen rather than being shut down from both sides?
So first of all, it's not always possible, right? There's a series of memes about how one side wants to, I don't know, feed puppies into the grinding mill and other people don't. And it's not really a compromise to only feed some puppies in, right? But assuming that a compromise is possible and that this is about something like how often we have meetings and that kind of stuff, sometimes the way you get to compromises is by temporary tryings of things. You would like X better if you had more experience with it, with the way we're planning to do it here. So how about for a month, we do it once a week, and then we'll have gathered some data, and those of you who are anti-X may change your minds. Those of you who are pro-X in theory may become anti-X once you've experienced it. Maybe we'll be able to make a better decision because you've got temporariness on your side. But it may be that they're incompatible. And if people are arguing about what language to write something in, why not both is not the correct answer, right? So it's not all, those compromises don't always happen.
Hi there, great talk. So you mentioned during your talk the someone shoulds, things that you might not be able to change or have the time to change, but that others should. As someone who's young, ambitious, looking for things to change, what are, in your opinions, some of the someone should changes that we should be making in C++?
This entire conference is nothing but someone should. We should welcome all kinds of people. We should center people. We should this. We should publish our menus. We should have an all-gender bathroom. I can't tell you. I just have a wish, and then it manifests. And what's more, we see the benefit. I was talking about getting women to apply and stuff like that. We've watched the ratios of who submits to our conference change over time as people realize that we are not like other conferences. But these sorts of things can happen anywhere. If you are part of an organization that gives off a bit of a prickly vibe to certain kinds of people. I was at a place once that used to tease someone about not drinking caffeinated pop and would leave cans of pop on her desk because to be a real programmer, you should drink this kind of thing. That's not cool. Changing that kind of, much of what they say is intended as humor situation, can make a big difference. And you can find things like that to do on a very small scale. Yeah. Here. Yeah.
Thanks. Do you have advice on, how to keep yourself open and realize that when you're pursuing a change that, okay, actually, maybe this is wrong, and sort of realize that early?
I think for me, the important insight is that you can't tell the difference between something that you shouldn't be doing and something that's going to take 50 years. So it's not, you don't need to distinguish. It can still be correct and right and your wish, but not be something you're going to put your time into right now, especially if you can identify a smaller part of it that's less extreme, less controversial, less difficult, less something. And then maybe from the, get there, and having done that, maybe the far off one will seem like, oh, I just need to do this 50 more times and we win. But maybe from there you have a different perspective and go, actually, this is fantastic. I don't think there's any need to do the rest of that. Like we should eliminate money. That's not something you can take on, right? But maybe campaigning for a UBI is something you can take on. There's lots of ways to do something smaller. Back here.
Thanks, Kate, it was great talk. I have two questions. May I ask them? First, about the groups. You said about the groups, how to choose right group. So how to choose them? For example, how to choose all the possible nationalities, all the possible kinds of names. So, for example, recently I Googled the word woman. And I
don't recommend that.
Yeah, and there was not all groups covered on the Google results. So, not all. How to choose them? That's my first question, and second one. Can I ask it now or later?
Well, let me tackle that one, because you are right that that's really hard work, right? If I'm writing a manual and I'm supposed to do examples, and I think of, well, I could use my brother's name and my father's name and my next door neighbor's name, and then I kind of run out of steam. One of the benefits of the diverse team is that you have people on your team who are not called Jim and Mike and Steve, because they're a different gender, or they're from a different cultural background, or they're much older or much younger than you, and it exposes you to more names. And you can say in a group meeting, hey, I need 28 names. And people can just call them out and we'll write them all on the whiteboard. And ta-da, you got a diverse group of names. But if everyone on your team has the same knowledge and context as you, you're not getting a diverse group of names. And so for a lot of times, that is the benefit. Like, we want to be welcoming. We want to have pictures on our website. But we just took pictures of ourselves and we're all the same. Well, if you were not all the same, then you could just have the easy task of taking pictures of yourself, and they wouldn't be all the same on the website. And we just used names we knew, or all those things. Like, these are the failings of monoculture teams that people are often unaware of when they're on a monoculture team. Certain tasks become much easier when you have a diverse group. There's just more background to draw on, and it's effortless. That said, you can still do it. You can steal other people's work. The Canada Revenue Agency, as a pretty good example, they have all these worked out tax examples, and they have same-sex couples, they have a variety of cultural names, they have like whether first names and last names order, all of that stuff just in their examples. So it's not just Jim and Sue bought a house in North York and da-da-da. It's like representative of the entire country. So if you can't do it yourself, you can steal the work of someone else who's doing a good job of it. Yes. Now you had a second question.
And another one about Nazi bar. So once I met the guy with the sign, and I decided to approach him and ask why. It was he was in some shop, like courier or something like that. And it appeared that he actually didn't know the truth about, he didn't realize what did it mean. So he had a really good idea, but he didn't understand what does it mean. So,
yeah.
May it happen that we can judge about people, about their appearance, even about people with Nazi.
So it depends how extreme it is, right? In the Nazi bar story, he's covered in a variety of different symbols. But one thing that happens a lot on the include server is someone whose avatar picture is Pippi the Frog, who has become adopted by some pretty nasty groups. But people have maybe had that avatar since they were 15 years old, and they don't know that it's a problem. And often a message from a moderator says, I don't know if you know, but that message has kind of been, that avatar is being used by, here's a Wikipedia link, and many times, I'll change my profile picture, no big deal. And it's the people who are suddenly deeply emotionally invested in this, even though they have no idea what it means at all. Maybe you do actually have an idea what it means and you're just saying you don't. So yeah, there absolutely are people who are accidentally using symbols that have been taken over. That's a thing that happens. Education, you don't have to necessarily kick them out, but what you do is you do something. You don't just assume good intent and wait for them to punch someone. You do something. Are we good?